Welcome back, everyone. All right, in this next lesson, I'd like to talk a little bit about various techniques used in the standard shuffle. Now, before I get to playing and showing these to you, the standard shuffle typically is going to be a more laid back, maybe a volume friendly type of shuffle. We're not quite getting into the heavier shuffles yet, the shuffles with ghost notes, that sort of thing. It's sort of just a basic shuffle to accompany the music at hand. So every instrument here between the hi-hat, snare drum, and bass drum that we're going to start with requires its own technique, and that technique will sort of depict what type of shuffle or the vibe of the shuffle that you're going for. So let's start with the hi-hat here. Now, if you're going for a very basic, understated shuffle, I would suggest playing the hi-hat with the tip of the stick. So when we do our shuffle rhythm, again, which is the one triplet, two triplet, three triplet, dot, da, dot, da, dot, da, we're playing with the tip of the stick. We're not quite on the edge of the hi-hat just yet. Again, we're going for a little more of an understated shuffle until we get to some other variations, all right? So just a standard version of that would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Limited technique, limited accents, maybe a little bit of motion with the arm, but nothing really overstated. Again, we will get into that in other lessons. If you want to do variations on the hi-hat, you can start getting into the idea of hitting the hi-hat on the edge or using what we call the molar technique with the motion of the arm, the whip of the arm. And I'll give you an example of that right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, notice you heard more accents, more motion. You saw more motion in my arm. There are two places you can strike, really three places you can strike with the molar accents or the molar motion. One is more a stronger accent on the tip itself, if you're doing the whip stroke and then striking the tip like that. The next one would be a completely flat stroke on the stick, like this, where you're covering most of the hi-hat or most of the cymbal with the stick. And then the third more common area with the molar or the whip stroke would be the edge of the hi-hat and what we call the shoulder of the stick, which hits right about here where the stick starts to taper down, all right? And that's, again, the more common, more popular area of that molar technique, and I'll play that for you again using that edge. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, keep in mind, as we're starting to really dig into these accents, we are starting to pervade into some higher dynamic levels, and maybe that's something for the standardized shuffle that you're not quite wanting to get into that yet. You want to just sort of, again, keep it understated, less accents, less movement. You have to sort of read the room and see what the music is about at that point. Now, there are, of course, ways to open up the hi-hat a little bit with the foot and get more edge that way. We're going to cover that in some later lessons. For now, we're going to just use a closed hi-hat. Now, with the snare drum, there are various approaches we can have this with the snare. One, again, using the standard shuffle or the understated shuffle as an example, would be just sort of the dead center of the snare with the tip of the stick, okay? Just striking it, full stroke, middle of the drum. Now, for those who know how to do rim shots and are feeling good about those rim shots, about keeping them consistent, there are various rim shots you could play. And the standard rim shot, I would say, for a shuffle would probably be somewhere maybe not completely dead center with the tip, but a little further back. Now, you can hit the dead center of the drum like that, but that's, again, going to bring you up to that next level of a dynamic range. I'll show you an example, but for now, I'm just going to play what we call sort of a pulled back rim shot, right around the back end of this dot here, okay? Like this. And a third area of the rim shot would be even further back here where you're getting a very sort of twangy sound. So now you have combinations of straight hi-hat, molar technique, and 3 areas you can be hitting the snare drum with the rim shot. Dead center, halfway pulled back, and then that twangy full pullback, all right? Finally, with the bass drum, because you want the bass drum to breathe a little bit and you don't want to really kill it, the best thing to do is either play heel down, where you're pulling the beater off the head, or you can play heel up. You can bury the beater into the bass drum head, but what I suggest is doing a stroke where you pull your right foot back on the pedal a little bit, use the heel up, and the beater strikes the head and pulls off. Something like this. So I'm using that full stroke with the foot, beater striking and coming off a little bit, and the bass drum breathes a little, okay? So with this standard shuffle, I'm gonna give you 2 examples. I'm gonna give you an example where we play the hi-hat straight, the stick in the center of the drum, and maybe a buried beater in the bass drum. Let's play that first. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next example, I'll give you more of a molar technique with the accents on the edge of the hi-hat and a pulled back rim shot, maybe not all the way back, but sort of that edge of the dot. And now I'll pull my bass drum back and give you a little more of an open sound from the bass drum. Okay, here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you can hear that difference, there really is a change in sound going from one version to the other. If you read the room and really understand the dynamics that the music is demanding, you'll be able to choose which combination of techniques and vibe and that sort of thing you want for these shuffle grooves in order to approach the music right. In upcoming lessons, we're going to talk even more technique and some variations to the patterns. Stay tuned.